I can call you, this is a government that is out of touch, a government that is out of ideas, a government that is out of time. So today this Dáil faces a question. And the question is simple. Are we heading in the right direction under this government or the wrong direction? And the answer is plainly clear for anybody to see. In housing, in health, in the cost of living, in MICA and many, many other issues. Things are getting worse for far too many people. The Irish people have big ambitions for their country. They have big ambitions for their communities and for their families. But they are stuck in a rut because they are with a government that has created more problems than it solves. A government that is big on promises but weak on delivery. So I can't call you, I have no confidence in a government that has turned a housing crisis into a social disaster. I have no confidence in a government that has brought our healthcare system to a standstill for so many patients. I have no confidence in a government that has failed to protect lower and middle income households from the sharp edge of the cost of living crisis. And members of this Dáil shouldn't either. And that is why I'm voting no confidence in this government. It is time for change. It is time to replace this government.
Well, last week Sinn Féin looked across the water to Westminster, to a parliament that they take their expenses from but not their seats. They saw mayhem, they saw chaos and they saw dysfunctionality. And they said, how can we get some of that over here? It seems to me that's the reason for the discussion this evening. Because respectfully, Las Concorla, this motion does nothing for the people we're here to represent. It is true that our country and our citizens are facing many challenges. But the best way to address those challenges is to ensure that we have a strong economy with the necessary resources so we can make interventions when they are needed, just as we proved during the pandemic.
Las Concorla, there's a really pressing case for change. The reality is that younger generations in Ireland are now growing up worse than their parents who came before them, that young people are locked out with no prospect of secure, affordable homes, that workers on low pay and in precarious conditions are struggling to get by rather than getting on. We know that Ireland needs a pay rise, and we know that the state can and must deliver a new social contract with real change offered on housing, on care, on climate and on more. We need to build an equal, sustainable Ireland, contributing proudly to our European and international future. But we can only do this if those holding the levers at power levels understand that change can't wait, and if they're ambitious enough to do more, to do better in delivering tangible results. The tone of too much of this debate has been one of mock outrage, of mock anger, and I think that's not helpful. We've sought in this party, in Labour, to bring a constructive approach to opposition, to put forward genuine alternatives, to try and address the real challenges that all of us hear every day from our own constituents and from people across this island. We meet people struggling to make ends meet. We meet parents forced to become full-time campaigners for the basic rights of their children, particularly autistic children and those with a disability. And week in, week out, we know the sand is running out as we fail to tackle the climate disaster. So my conviction, Las Concorla, is the government we need is a government of the left, a government that understands that the purpose of the state is to deliver for the common good of all, to deliver and to harness state action to deliver on housing, on childcare and early years education, on healthcare and on climate, and that's not this government.
This is a government that understands that the public investments needed are only possible in a strong economy managed responsibly. The message we never hear from the parties opposite is that one, who will promise the world spending somebody else's money. This is a government that will put together one of the most significant budgets in living memory, responding comprehensively to the cost of living pressures that so many families are facing across the country this autumn, while Sinn Féin will continue to call for elections and call for emergency budgets every second month for populist political gain. There may come a time when your populist disruption brings down this government, but it won't be today. This House sees through your tactics, and so do the public.
I wonder if the families who have been rendered homeless would be applauding the speech of the Deputy who's just sat down. When I'm listening to the Taoiseach talking about housing, I genuinely wonder, is he in the same country as I am. He tells us progress is being made, and I have to say that is a deeply disingenuous statement. And there are times I wonder, is the Taoiseach in denial? Does he actually believe the things that he's saying? When in fact what's very clear is he is, just like his other colleagues, including Deputy Brophy, is wilfully misleading the House and the public, not only about his own record, but indeed the record of those of us on this side of the House. And the reason why is because the government doesn't want an election, and that is the very definition of cynical.
I recall saying that in the Convention Centre 2 years ago that Micheál Martin had all the right characteristics to be a good Taoiseach. I think the last years have proven that to be right. I think he took the baton from the Taoiseach who managed the COVID crisis in a way that we can be proud of, and it did not drop, and it will not drop again as it's handed back this year, and we go to the full term delivering for our people. We have, all three parties have differences, but understand that politics is the art of the possible. And we will serve our people to the end, to the very best of our abilities, hoping that in that time, this wave of populism in politics that's gone right across the world might start beyond the wane, because it will not serve our people, it will not deliver.
I have to say, I think the government is doing a great job for those it represents. You look at the big 5 energy companies. They've announced increased profits of 280 million euros in the last year. The big 5 food companies increased profits of 174 million euros in the last year. IRES REIT, the largest landlord in this country, increased profits of 67.5 million, 16% increase. All the other corporate landlords are the same, the electricity companies are the same, and collectively, you look at the billionaires in this country, they've increased their wealth by 15.5 billion euros since 2020. The government represents those who are profiting from the cost of living and the housing crisis. And those people are doing extremely well. The crisis for ordinary people is an opportunity to profit for those that the government represents. The government does not very clearly represent the interests of renters who are faced with 10% year-on-year effectively rent increases. The government does not represent the 1 in 3 people now who are living in energy poverty. The government does not represent low and middle income workers who are seeing their income effectively eroded day after day after day, with prices out of control, and the government doing absolutely nothing to tackle them.
Being in government is about having discipline, making tough decisions and telling the public what is possible as opposed to what is popular. Government cannot run on slogans or on irresponsible spending commitments. Ceann Comhairle, Sinn Féin are like the Muppets, Statler and Waldorf, heckling from their balconies and offering absolutely no viable solutions for the people of Ireland. Thank you.
Once you had the numbers, it completely changed in terms of the Business Committee, in relation to guillotines, in relation to how we do business in this House. And I think that actually does matter, because it changes the nature of the debate in this House. And I believe that that was a big mistake. The Dáil basically doesn't have control of the agenda. The government has taken control of the agenda. For those reasons, and a myriad of other ones, and sometimes it looks like many of our public services are really stuck together with sellotape. There is a myriad of failures, but by no objective analysis could you say that this government is doing a good job. And I've got to say, I wonder whether or not this country can afford this government with some of the decisions that are being made at the moment.
Thank you very much.
The waste is appalling.